Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Doug Collins Podcast. Glad to have you joining us in. Today is a special episode for me. It's one that I've been looking forward to for a while. It is somebody that I have on all of us, and you know this here on the podcast, we have been with everybody from folks who make bow and arrows, to, bows, to bow hunters, to musicians, to politicians, everywhere else. And we have people who've broken barriers, but also are just the best in their industries. And one today is sort of a personal, not only a friend of mine, but someone that I've looked up to for a while, just because of his stance, how he handles himself. And you're going to get to know him today here on the Doug Collins Podcast. I am so happy to have Fred Humphries with Microsoft here today. As far as I'm concerned, he is Microsoft. I don't care who else you say about everybody else. Fred is Microsoft to me. And we're going to have a lot of discussion about some things today on the podcast. But first off, Fred, welcome to the Doug Collins Podcast.
I am glad to be here, Doug, and I just want to be right back at you. There's a mutual admiration. I got to know you when you were in Congress, and you embodied everything that you want in a member of Congress and representing Georgia, but also representing this country. Your values, you're a great communicator, you're smart, and you want to make a difference. You always have known your North Star. And I just wanted to say, quite frankly, it aligned with my North Star, but just whether it didn't or didn't, I always felt you spoke truth to power. And I just want to say, we miss you. We're glad you have a podcast. I've listened to some of them. It is quite a cross section of what you've had. And so I'm honored to be with you today. And it's just great seeing you.
Well, it's good to be with you, and thanks for that as well. Well, let's just start off at the beginning. One of the things that I've always done, especially when I've interviewed a lot of folks who people know, I want them to know the people on my podcast, and whether you have, a public figure that's in the news all the time, or someone who's never, but are around. I want people to know, because when I hear so much, and I have a lot of different age groups listening, I want them to know that if they put their mind to stuff, they can do it. So, Fred, give us a little background about where you came from, how you got here. Just let us know you a little bit.
I absolutely will. I'm going to do I'm going to try to do the short story aspect. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I fast forward. I was raised in Tennessee, raised in Nashville, Tennessee. Great place for good country music. And when I was growing up, it was more on the production side than it was on the go see a show, get some good entertainment. And Nashville has changed. and went to Morehouse College in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia. My wife of 35 years is from Macon, Georgia. I get there making a fair amount to see my mother-in-law. Went on to Temple Law School in Philadelphia. Came back home to Tennessee. And like yourself, I have a commitment to community. I have a commitment to trying to make a contribution to society. And I think one of the places you could do that is in government. I worked for Governor Ned Ray McWhorter, for 6 years. I did something that I really enjoyed, and I think about this when I think about this podcast. I was on radio station WLAC 1510 AM in Nashville on Sunday. I had a talk show, Doug. You probably didn't know that. And I only had it for a few months because I ended up moving to D.C. I looked forward for every Sunday. But I will tell you, like you have to do, preparation for a talk show is like, okay, I got 30 minutes. I got to figure out what I would say. I had an open line. And I'm like, okay, you want to get callers? Oh, my gosh. The amount of time I spent on that for that 30 minutes was unbelievable. But I'd have all kind of people join with all kind of views because you want to mix it up. You want to get different things from different perspectives. So, but that's just a side note. But I ended up in government. I worked on campaigns for a period. I moved to D.C. and I worked in the House of Representatives for a member of Congress, Sanford Bishop from Georgia as well. Then I ended up in the private sector, been with Microsoft for 22 years. And when I talk about the commitment to making a contribution to society, I think people like yourself have made so many contributions. And you can do it. You don't have to be in government. You don't have to be elected, but you have a greater opportunity, I think, to make a difference, to go out, be a champion for communities on different issues. And I'm one of those that always people kind of found, I think you have found this, I am economically conservative and on some social issues, probably on the progressive side on different. And a lot of people would look at me like, oh, wait a minute, how do you square that circle? And I'm like, sometimes it's hard to square that circle.
Right. Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
It can be, but I try to. So I feel like I've been a part of folks, and I, at Microsoft, we really believe in our mission: empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, and that applies to everybody. And that's what I really like about the 22 years of doing advocacy and being an ambassador for Microsoft.
Well, and that is cool. Well, okay, you've opened up some doors here, and before we get to some other stuff,
I figured I did.
You got your Macon, Georgia. I mean, I'm still in the Air Force down at Warner Robins, so around Macon all the time. Macon, talking about music. I mean, that's another, just amazing hotbed, but for music and with Nashville as well. But Fred, there for just a second. I mean, and I know a lot of Microsoft folks gonna be listening to this, but that you had to hear that. And here it is, WLAC up in Nashville. I'm here with you today. I mean, you had that radio voice kick back in. It was like
it was hard. It was hard because but it was. I mean, you just get a call and you'd be like, okay, and then and people will let you know what they think. You get all kind of feedback. I'm like, oh, okay, and then you have to make sure your facts are right because they correct you.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And this is before you could go do a Bing search or Google search or do a search and do a quick fact check. So.
It works out. Hey, I still do some radio. I do a lot of radio, and you get those callers, and sometimes it's like, okay, thank you for calling. Moving right along.
Doug, just real quickly, when I first started, right, you want to, because you open up the lines and you're like, nothing's lighting up the lights. It's the next caller. And then you realize, like, okay, I got to have this different aspect. And then you could just like say certain things, it just light up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got you one, Fred. And again, for everybody out there, this is just an experience we've had. I was on radio the other day when the president decided he made his announcement about the pardoning or the issue with the marijuana, the whole. And I just made mention of it on the radio. I just said, hey, this just came out, interesting, just as a comment. The phone lines lit And the first two, Fred, I have to be honest with you. I think the first two were already partaking when they called in.
I think you were going to say that. I think you were going to say that.
Oh, it was amazing.
Like,
One guy, it was amazing. It was amazing. But anyway, hey, speaking of also of Nashville, Nashville has turned into, and I know from a Microsoft perspective, but from a tech perspective, but also from a music, has really, really just changed over the years.
Absolutely. When I lived in Nashville, the mayor of Nashville selected me to be on the airport authority.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, back in the day, Doug, when you walk through the airport, you'd see a little picture of Fred Humphries. As you were departing, to go to the baggage claim. And so, it'd been a little bit, I make it to Nashville from time to time. And recently I was in Nashville, and oh my gosh, I looked at that airport. Wow, it's not the airport that we had envisioned when I was there over 30-something years ago on that airport authority. I actually think I might have been the youngest member ever to be on the airport authority board. And now I look at it, and then there's music playing, and then you go downtown. You can go to, you used to go to Branson. Nashville is where they wrote and produced. I remember when the Bluebird Cafe opened up in Nashville, and used to go to it, and it could get in. It was not a line, aspect. And now, it's bachelorette parties. It's a foodie town. It's got good music, and it's booming. I mean, that city is booming. Diverse economy, from the healthcare side, and good people. And still getting a little bit more expensive. It was a great family place. It was a great place to raise a family aspect. But yeah, no. If you want to hear some good music and have some good food, and I won't say good barbecue because I get in trouble for the Georgia folks or maybe the people in Memphis.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go to Macon and be saying something like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. But my favorite place in Macon is the Crystal. I like Crystal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do.
Uh-oh. I mean, you show your Homer roots there. I'm telling you. I mean, come on, the Crystal in Macon. I love it. There's a lot of good places down that part of the world. Well, getting into that, you was in government, and Sanford Bishop, again, I served with down here in Georgia. Sanford's initially a tough race this cycle, as a matter of fact. But you went over and you went to Microsoft. You've been over there over 20-something years now. How's it changed? What have you seen in the dynamics just in coming forward?
I would say with when it comes to innovation and technology, it's constantly changing. When I first joined the company, it was about Windows and it was about Office. And now today, when you look at innovation, it's about the cloud. It's about data centers. It's about cybersecurity. It's about privacy. It's about those type of issues. Just when I first joined, it was about intellectual property. It still is, but candidly, maybe a little less so on that aspect. And so today I think it's about trust. It's about security. And then when you look at some of the policy issues. There's a focus on criminal justice, but that's having to do with economic opportunity as well as, let's just be honest. I mean, what's on people's mind is crime, but it's also about like criminal justice and other aspects and how technology, data can play a role on that aspect. We focus on because we have data centers and energy. We focus on sustainability, but just energy use and things of that nature. So it evolves, and as new technologies evolve, it's there. There's gaming because we have Xbox and we have augmented reality with HoloLens that's used for military purposes aspects. So that's why, quite frankly, I've lasted 22 years because, Doug, every 2 years I switch jobs because I had a little bit of get bored. You don't get bored at Microsoft because the innovation is constant.
It is. I want to bring something out. Let's get this out in the open, I think early, and I think it goes into this working at Microsoft. Advocacy, lobbying, however you want to put it, especially sometimes it's taken, and I've always said this, I said, everybody comes up to me and says, oh, that's terrible, that's what's wrong with it. I said, no, the people who advocate
and for position stuff are the ones that are needed. When you have good ones, they're needed. And it's just like every other thing. You have people who are not good at it and they give a bad name to everybody else. But, from what you've seen from your advocacy standpoint, Microsoft, and especially in like criminal justice reform, employment hiring, disability hiring, these kind of things are areas where you have the resources to help, make a case known not only on a federal level, but at state levels as well. Does that also sort of bring it to you that you can make a difference? And it's not the bad perception that everybody brings into, quote, advocacy nowadays?
Oh, I think you're spot on with that question. I think about like in some of the areas that you just name. I mean, when I think about we have a person named Jenny LaFleur, who does accessibility, right? I mean, she's one of the foremost leaders in accessibility. Jenny is constantly working with the engineers on, quite frankly, giving input for design. And if you know anything about developers and engineers, they don't like anybody messing with their stuff or telling them what they should do or not do. And Jenny will be like, that's going to be a problem for a person with a hearing impairment. That's going to be a problem for a person with, X or Y on the visual side, And so I love that, because then that's making a difference if we make a better product for all. And from A to Z, that makes a difference in one's life in a big way, and particularly I'm there. So from that perspective, that keeps one going, and that does make us. It feels like you can touch one's life in a different way. I mean, and then at the same time, frankly, I think we've grown and matured as a company, but I think that we're also very thoughtful as you think of artificial intelligence and AI, right? How that can help to enable, empower, but at the same time, think about okay, as we create things, some things can be a tool, some things can be a weapon, and not used in a good way. Some things you got to think about how that helps to enable employment and workforce skills and different things, because we own LinkedIn and they just do so many neat things on LinkedIn Learning. And so it's just that keeps you going, and that makes you you feel good about it on that in that way.
It does, and I think that one of the things, and it sort of bled into what our next conversation, which is really, where we got to know each other on some other issues, but really got to know each other on criminal justice reform when we did the First
Correct.
Step Act, which is amazing, because you mentioned it earlier today, in our podcast, that, crime is the forefront right now, and I think what I'm concerned most about is what I've considered the what is being under the guise of criminal justice reform is really things that are hurting our system, and that's taking away from our safety, taking away from our police, not putting the bad guys in jail where they need to be. But when we worked on this, it also has another aspect, and I want to move from the criminal justice side to the practical side of this, because this is where Microsoft, and others were very helpful. But stuff like the First Step Act, then also with Fresh Start, Clean Slate, and all of these are helping people who do their time come back out and then be productive citizens. Why does that matter to a company like Microsoft?
It absolutely does, and I just want to commend you on that. When you with the first step, that's about recidivism, and just what you did on that, and you did it in a way that I just felt like was just so important. Yeah, like you just said, right? So important that, hey, bad people who do bad things, there needs to be accountability and that aspect. But then it's like, whoa, okay, you've done your time. You're here to do reentry, right?
Right.
And then, all crimes are not necessarily all the same. And so you need to think about, when you think about Fresh Start and Clean Start, wanting to expunge a record for certain low level, because I think this is real important to your listenership, because we're not talking about hey, you've done this bad crime, you get to get your record expunged, get out a free card aspect. But for nonviolent crimes, after a set period, to do something like that, and we Microsoft, when we look at it, we have signed off the second chance aspects of one to come out there. It's important to just kind of no data in the sense that because data is key. 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record. 1 in 3.
Yep, it's amazing.
Right? Nearly half the children have a parent with a criminal record. And so, you like a lot of things in life, you got to sometimes dig a little deeper of like, how can you make reforms or do things to create opportunity? And so we as a company, because some companies will be like, hey, you have X offense, you can't work there. I may be overstating that, but we believe in the second chance, and we have hired people who've had offenses before to create an opportunity, and it's worked out. I'm there. So
yeah, and I think that you've hit it on that. Is that look, and I've always thought this from as everyone knows, frankly from a conservative perspective, I think that is interesting for me. Is that is the reality that people matter, and that there is a redemptive quality to who we are. And I think as we go forward, one of the things that is as we look at not only these aspects, and I think your Microsoft and others are putting sort of not only their money behind it, but they're putting and their voice behind it. But you're actually using this in many areas to hire people who have had those. Talk about how that has been.
It's gone well. It's I don't have like the most recent kind of numbers or anything of that nature, but we create that opportunity, and it's one that we make sure that we share with others. And so based upon what I know, it's been going pretty well. And then the focus otherwise on criminal justice is really been about how can law enforcement use data more efficiently and more effectively as they have to take on different things of how you spend your time and your resources. I'm there because I'm one of those that on a personal note that we need to support our law enforcement. We need to make sure that the resources are provided for them to go do their job aspect. And particularly as we've seen whether crime has gone up or not, they need to be a properly funded aspect. And I think there's some things that can be done on the technology side to make them stronger. And that's where we try to focus in as Microsoft, on that technology and data side.
And I think you're providing a great start. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go into, nobody, and I sort of jokingly say when I, talk about Microsoft, that small little startup company in Washington State, Microsoft, nobody accuses you of being a startup anymore. Okay. And
no, we can't say that anymore at 200,000 employees.
Yeah, no, you're past that point. Okay.
Yeah, we are.
When you can fill your own, stadiums, by yourself 3 times over, you got an issue. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that your company is not involved in the aspects of competitiveness and making sure that there are open markets and this is an area. Y'all were some of the first. Microsoft in particular was one of the first to have to deal with this, not only U.S. but worldwide.
Yeah.
Some things are coming open in the United States Congress. People are, unfortunately, we've seen the attitude sometimes that big is just bad. If you're big, you're bad.
Yeah.
And I don't subscribe to that. I know y'all don't subscribe to that. But there's also a market where there can be some issues. I know Microsoft is supporting, there's a bill called the Open App Markets Act, which has to deal with apps, which all of us are dealing with nowadays. Talk to us a little bit about that and Microsoft's involvement in a competitive marketplace.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about it from a lesson learned perspective. When I joined Microsoft over 21 years ago, I joined when we had antitrust issues. We don't talk about that a whole lot, but we had a lot of market share on Windows. And one of the first responsibilities I had as I was head of state government affairs was to work with the 20 state attorney generals who, coming after us on, alleging us being in a monopoly and our market share. And I would just say that one of the things we learned from Windows and then there was this, called Netscape, and how it was alleged that we were doing things to make it harder for developers to be able to develop and things of that nature on our platform. And, through mistakes sometimes and things that you, what I'll call a teachable moment, you learn. And we reflected on, that's all been wrapped up, settled out, done, and completed, and where we learned so much that where a lot of people, it's kind of important to make sure government or through a regulatory body that make sure that competition stays alive and innovation stays alive. And I think that that's a lesson we've learned that we've embraced. It's a part of us. And so then you fast forward and you think about app stores and the app market, right? There's not a whole lot of competition. And then you want consumer choice. At the end of the day, if you have good competition and you don't limit consumer choice, that benefits the consumer on price, cost, and it just options. And so one of the things that we have engaged upon, Windows has an open, as they would say, open market. I won't get into other companies. There's a company that some would say doesn't.
Just may not be as open.
Just may not be as open, maybe more limited. But, that's just me. That's just you and me talking with a whole bunch of people listening on it. And so we came up with some commitments that we were looking to focus on in 4 important areas when it comes to what you should have with an open market or app store. And that's quality, safety, security, privacy, accountability, as fairness and transparency, and real important because developers play a role in developer choice. Let the consumer have that choice. And then what else is important is flexibility on in-app payments, because that's not a little thing. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
That, and then, just control over the use of their information. And that's aspect. So yes, we have been doing that, but I happen to think that this all comes from what you learn. And I think that's one of the things that I feel good. And, yes, I'm all in Microsoft here 22 years, but I try to keep it real and stay authentic and also be self-aware. But I actually really believe it goes back to the 1990s when we had market share of how we learned and grew to make sure, right, where, everybody wants to have that stickiness. They want to have their closed off, garden aspect. And I will tell you, I think we've embraced that going forward, and it's made us a better company. And it's been good.
It is. A quick note here, not to dwell on, but does it bother you sometimes, given the fact, look, Microsoft is a company most everybody in the world is very familiar with, very knows, and company, but also in that quote tech world. And there's a lot of discussion nowadays about big tech, and when they talk about it more toward the social app aspect, search app. Does it bother y'all that Microsoft, some of these others who are not as much in that, get lumped into that discussion a lot of times?
It has, and I mean, we are big, and you have to you have to just be self-aware. But I hope that what we constantly focus on is to make sure that it's like what we were just talking about: self-awareness, trust. That fairness, making sure, one of the things we think about a lot is that we're big, but who's a part of our ecosystem? Who's also making from a small and mid-sized business we touch. I don't remember the exact number, but, for every dollar that we do, X amount of dollars are made by small and mid-sized business companies and things of that nature. And that, being big results in having maybe sometimes additional responsibilities that you have to do. And so, that's one that you just can't run away from. And what we try to do is do the best we can do, have the right values and go about things in the right way. And hopefully the, consumer or in the enterprise space that we do a whole lot of business in, the customer feels like this is a good company, that reflects the things that we're looking for: good innovation, good technology, can trust us and can work with us. And at the same time, we're one that, we don't run away from, just like knowing that there's things that we might have to do better and more. But, and you're right about this. I think there's certain parts of technology industry that's under a greater microscope than others.
Right. I can see that. Well, and one of the things is, we started this whole thing off just a little bit ago talking about, why you got in, and it's making a difference in doing that. And policy is not always just governmental. Policy is something, it goes to companies as well. And I've always said one of the things that I see so many times on folks on both sides of the aisle is that if they get so tied up in their policy, they forget the very people they're trying to affect. Or if they go the opposite way, they forget the people, they forget about the policy. Policy and people have to go together. And Microsoft's made a commitment. 200,000 employees. You mentioned that number, but it's also about the local commitments. And coming from Georgia, y'all made a substantial commitment in Georgia in the last little bit. Not in addition, I want to give you a minute or two to talk about that, because that makes a difference in people's lives there.
First of all, we are so glad to be in Georgia, and as we continue to grow in Georgia. But I want to start off with Governor Kemp. Governor Kemp was so key to our efforts as we look to new opportunities in different states. We've always had a presence in Georgia, but to grow that presence, he was a key player in the recruitment. And that's why when, I can't remember the exact number, but the state of Georgia under Governor Kemp has been the number one state in recruitment on businesses for the last 4 or 5 years, if not longer, on there. And his team and him himself helped us in the sense of, like, as we look to do what we're doing in the Atlantic Yards, where there are now 2,300 employees from Microsoft. We've bought some property and in Quarry Yards. We have some data centers, a couple places in the state, and that was in working with the governor on that. And the reason being that Georgia is so attractive, great higher universities, the college scenes, from Atlanta, from Georgia Tech, from the Atlanta University Center to the University of Georgia to Georgia State. There's just different schools throughout, and for recruitment and human capital and intellectual skills and being able to recruit. You have a diverse economy in Atlanta. Quite frankly, you look where there's also other companies that you can have an opportunity to say, hey, when you're done with X company, maybe Microsoft. And it's not just engineers. We're hiring a little bit of every aspect there. So Georgia it's a great place to be. It's a affordable place to live. Good people. And a good place to raise a family, and it's got talent. And so it's over the last couple of years, there's been some growth, and we are invested and committed to continue.
Well, and that's apparent. The Microsoft building right there off of 7585, which is in Atlantic Station, is beautiful. I saw it the morning I was coming out, going back home from the airport, saw it over here, real near where one of my sons lives. But coming from a perspective of a Morehouse man and a Macon, married to a Macon family, I can see.
And she went to Spelman too, so we did the Atlanta connection, and my niece and nephew live in Atlanta. My sister and brother-in-law. As Ray Charles says, Georgia's always on my mind.
I love it. Well, there's one thing that's about, I think what is good for this country, good for Microsoft, and good for everybody, is that Fred Humphries is on a lot of people's minds, because he takes his role very seriously. And as we've talked about today, Fred, it's been very good to catch up. I'm looking forward to, again, work, with y'all on things as we go forward, continuing the processes that are near to dear in both of our hearts as we go forward. But lastly, just thank you for being on the podcast today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
And Doug, thank you for being just the good person that you are. Keep on making a difference, and It's just who you are. You are one that wants to make a difference for people. So thank you for all that you do, and appreciate you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Folks, that's it for the Doug Collins broadcast. Talk to you again later. Thanks. Hey everybody, MyPillow. I just wanted to let you know MyPillow is having the biggest sheet sale of the year. You'll have to help. You have all have helped build MyPillow into an amazing company that it is today. And now Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to his listeners. The Percal bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they're all on sale. For example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but it is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code. Order now because when they're gone, they're gone. You're not going to be able to get it. These Percal sheets are breathable. They have cool, crisp feel. They come with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. Call 1-800-986-3994. Use the promo code Collins, Collins, or you can go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use the promo code Collins, Collins. Lisa and I sleep on these sheets every night. You will want to have them as well. They're a wonderful product. Go right now, either 800-986-3994, code word Collins, or go to mypillow.com. Also use the code word Collins to get this discount. You will not regret it.